understand Israel, you must understand the Cushite history that's been left behind. Is that telling you something yet? That to know Israel, you have to know the Cushite. Today's date is January 8, 2018. And my title today is Abraham is Overrated. Of course, I'm going to be talking about Abraham, but just looking at the way that he came into the scriptures, you might understand by now, those of you who follow me, and thanks for your listenership. But you'll notice that I don't subscribe only to the traditional teaching of the Bible or the Torah, even in the Hebrew Israelite teachings. I did it first when I first left the Christian church and found out about all of this. But I decided to try to look at the scriptures from a different angle, and I started out rereading the Bible. And really, from last year, I'm just at Genesis 5. I'm about to take a look at Genesis 6 with the flood, but I've paused here for a bit, studying some other things, and deciding how much of Noah's flood I want to read into and study right now, because that's going to be a big topic, and I can't do that justice, so I may just touch on it briefly and continue reading and teaching through the scriptures, and when I learn a little bit more of Noah's flood, I'll come back to that. But I wanted to go through the scriptures because I just got tired of the trickery in the scriptures, because people are just teaching whatever they choose to teach because they're being led to teach it in that manner. And so I like the people who are thinking for themselves, people who just want to look at the text and try to figure out really what they feel it is saying. And you hope that that's what the Most High was trying to say in the first place. But so many people teach with an agenda and taking sides with other people or with a group that they're working for and so on. I'm tired of that stuff, so I started to reread the scriptures. Now, I understand that Abraham is pivotal to the story of Israel, the nation of Israel in the scriptures, and to some of the top religions on earth. So my topic over Abraham is overrated might be a little controversial, but the Bible itself is controversial. The Torah itself, there's a lot of fighting going on the earth because of the information included in this book. Hey, it's just in the same vein, right? Now, some people don't even believe Abraham was a real person, that he lived, and Moses and so on. I can't say that. I'm just rereading the Bible, so I don't know. Do I believe Abraham was real and that he lived and these stories happened? Absolutely, I do believe all of that. But I still continue to investigate all of this, and so I'm going to take a look at Abraham now, though. But I'm wondering here, why didn't the Canaanites call Abraham the Assyrian? As you hear this talk about the Hebrew Abraham, the Hebrew, and he's one that crossed over and so on. But why didn't they call him Abraham the Assyrian? Because if you read, you'll find out that Abraham had ties to the Assyrians. He was known as an Akkadian. So why didn't they also, call him Abraham the Black Ethiopic or Akkadian Assyrian? Since to me, he would have been of the Ethiopic peoples, right? But normally you learn that he would have been connected to the people who we call Shem. he was in that lineage and he has nothing to do with Ham. That's really kind of strange, but it's like whatever I read, he seems to be Ethiopic. And if you're dealing with the Ethiopians, then you're talking about a son of Ham. So what's the proper understanding here? You see, there might be an understanding that will clear this up for me so that I will need to correct myself, which is completely fine with me. But most of us don't understand some of the things that we're teaching. We leave the Christian church, say, oh, now I'm an Israelite. We start just regurgitating everything that our teachers tell us now on the Hebrew Israelite side. But we don't really understand that some of these things don't make sense, or if they do, we don't know how to explain them. But we just regurgitate a lot of things and we don't really have as much understanding. But I'm challenging all these things because I'm looking for understanding. I don't just want to regurgitate. Because the scriptures, really say we should have understanding. If you read the wisdom books like, let's say like Job, Book of Psalms, Proverbs, it will show you that a lot of questioning happened with the people who lived in those times. They were questioning a lot, and certainly people in other books of the Bible, they were questioning life, questioning the Most High as well. But if you question something today, now in 2018, according to this calendar that we use, you are looked at like, oh, you're going off track. You're going off track. Watch out for him. Watch out for her. So you can read the questioning of the people in the Bible. Look at all the people in Job who had all kinds of questions. And you teach all kinds of fancy lessons about them, and you're glad that they questioned, because you can draw a lot of stuff from that and teach all kinds of fancy lessons about God. But if somebody questions today in your church or your camp or your temple, you just, it's like you put up a yellow sticky note. It's just like, look out for that person, like they're going off stray. So you have something to protect. You are the one who is more in fear. Because somebody who's questioning stuff, at least they're trying to own up to their fear that maybe something is wrong. I just don't understand how this could be that way. But you have something deep that you are afraid of if somebody asks certain strong questions. What I most fear is not knowing. So I got to ask some questions. So Abraham, it seems, if you read different authors, Abraham was an Assyrian, and Ezekiel did say, I made other trees jealous of the Assyrian. So it seems like the Assyrians, who originally seemed to be from Cush, Babylon and so on, the Assyrian seemed to have been a great and mighty people at one point. And if the scriptures are saying that he made other trees jealous of the Assyrian, then that means the Assyria that gets low play in history, not as much information about their greatness as the greatness of Israel is mentioned in the scriptures, because you'll say, well, it's because the Bible is dealing with Israel, so Israel gets talked about a lot. You notice that the time when Israel was set up as a nation to the time when they went down is relatively short time, especially the time when they had it going well and they were living according to the commandments properly and things were going well. It's relatively short time in history. And some of those times when they were not fighting with other nations, they were fighting amongst themselves. So it's like, where's the real picture right there of a wonderful, blessed empire called Israel that the Creator set up? That is just like some, euphoric state, and bliss and all that. The one little bliss you hear of in the garden that came and went so fast it was not even as long as the blink of an eye, so to speak. But at some point it seems that the Assyrian was somehow the cause of other people's jealousy in the past. And so if Abraham was connected with the Assyrians, then that's telling you that before Israel came along, there was another people that the Creator had put up and elevated and made them strong, allowed them to have power on the earth. Now, if someone has power on the earth given by the Creator before Israel comes along, why don't we hear more about that? Why wasn't that written of more? Especially if Abraham was around them. So you got Abraham, you could say, instead of Abraham the Hebrew, you could also say Abraham the Assyrian, Abraham the Ethiopian, Abraham the Akkadian Assyrian, right? Or instead of Abraham the Hebrew, how about Abraham the Cushite? Now, Micah chapter 5 says Assyria is the land of Nimrod. Let's look at that. Micah 5 and verse 6. And they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod in the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian, when he cometh into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders. So we see that Abraham is surfacing around this time when you're dealing with figures in history and places in history like Nimrod and Assyria and Arcadia. But they don't get much play, just like this Sumer that just showed up out of nowhere, as many people will tell you. It came and went down so fast. They came from the east and they started building this mysterious tower, apparently that no one can live in, it seems. But they're showing you thousands or millions of pictures all over the earth of a tower that people were building with bricks, and bricks would fall down and it takes a year to go back up, like some apocryphal book will tell you. And they make you think that people were building an actual physical single tower that people were all going to live in. My understanding of that is radically different, like completely different of what this tower was. And I'm not afraid to be wrong, so I don't mind throwing it out there, but not in this video. I'm going to tell you what this thing is about, in my view. Because everybody's going to tell you, this is the tower that they were building. This is, and see the remnants of it. And it's always some little kind of stuff that just looks like, what is that? Like, you can't make sense out of that. And you're never allowed to dig them up to really see. You can just see the way it just looks now, like just a pile of dirt or something, and it like, this is it. Well, it's just really funny. And I'm going to tell you what the tower was, in my view. But, you got to really question stuff, right? Because I told you already, the Torah is within the Torah, the way I see it. That means the real Torah is hidden inside the Torah. The real instruction from the Most High is hidden within. You notice how the Creator does stuff? He puts some stuff that seems to be outside of your reach, and you're going to get it if you follow certain instructions and if you dig in and you search. But for those of you who might think that something is wrong in terms of the Torah not being true, because I'm asking all these questions and you hear so many other people striking down the Torah, ask yourself, why is it that with the Garden of Eden, so many people say, here's where the Garden of Eden is, and then they're still coming up with other researches and teachings that say, no, it's over here, it's over there. Then you get with the Tower of Babel, and they say, here it is, no, here it is, here's the mound right here, that proves it. And then somebody says, but here's the mound right here, it proves it. And they're telling you, there's always these multiple sites for just about everything. Now you got multiple sites for where Jerusalem is. Now you're hearing that Jerusalem is really in the Americas. So what is this place called Jerusalem in what we know as Israel today? So there's multiple places. So what we find is that on earth, there are multiple arrows that point to truth. Everybody is trying to tell you where truth is. Everybody's trying to tell you where this place is, and sometimes things get debunked and so on. One thing that cannot be denied, though, is that there are people out there making new arrows that point to a new site, a new location. So it then lets you think that there is a truth, or there may be a truth. It's just that you're being pointed in many directions. Why spend billions and billions of dollars and many, many years, even thousands of years, trying to hide information that is not true across so many different countries on earth, with so many different people, and moving the people out of those areas, whether by starvation or war, biological war or whatever? Why do all of that to move people out of certain areas and so on if there is really no truth in those areas? Notice if there's nothing going on in a particular land or a part of a land, there's usually not a lot of arrows pointing to that place telling you that this is where it is and so on. And so because people don't really know or don't really think that. But yeah, so there's no real need to say, hey, like the Tower of Babel is right here in, let's say, Toronto. That one just wouldn't fly, it seems. So nobody really looks there. Or let's say, in Trinidad, the Tower of Babel is in Trinidad. You're not going to find billions of dollars being spent trying to tell you about multiple sites than in Trinidad, for the Tower of Babel. It just wouldn't make sense, so you don't waste money. That tells me that the people who are spending billions of dollars and hiring many people to participate in hiding these informations and hiding locations and creating new arrows to point to different places are doing so because they know or feel that there is a truth to this kind of information, but they must lead you everywhere so that you can't really be sure. But they don't spend that kind of money, that level of money, in a place like, let's say, Trinidad, if it doesn't fit what's in the written record, because they know it's just not there. But they're spending the money in elsewhere, other places where it seems, it might be credible that the stories are saying that it might be here or there. So that suggests to me strongly that the Torah is true. But there may be some changes made to certain things in it, because we don't have the original Torah to verify that the current copy we have is true. So there may have been some changes made, or there may just have been wrong teachings given to us in modern times about the Torah that we now have. So the wrong teachings will still lead you the wrong way. So you can understand that if I'm questioning this stuff here with Abraham, that I really feel people should be searching and looking, digging deeper. It seems that if you are a Torah or a Bible reader, it's difficult for you to admit that Abraham was of the Ethiopic people, even though you'll hear of books like The Wonderful World of the Cushites or the Ethiopians, and you'll read of the greatness of this people before there was ever anything called Israel. And the picture of Israel in the scriptures does not give as great a picture of what the Ethiopians, the ancient Ethiopians, did, what they accomplished, and how far they spread. It really doesn't. Now, if you say that Israel, when they were living right and keeping the commandments, other nations couldn't beat them, couldn't, take them down, then they had their power from keeping the commandments, and they were the baddest thing, and they were only going to be defeated when they stopped keeping the commandments and it was time for punishment. The Most High was going to send an army to come against them. Now, if the Ethiopians were so strong and became widespread and went just about everywhere, and they were conquering and building up new societies and so on, leaving their seed everywhere they went, starting up new communities, and how did they, and they were conquering their enemies that came up against them, how could they have gotten that massive worldwide power if they were not keeping the commandments that Israel kept to get their power? That means that the ancient Ethiopians, and Ethiopia is mentioned dealing with the rivers that ran by the Garden of Eden, these ancient Ethiopians, they weren't keeping the commandment proper that we read of that Israel got. They never got a Mount Sinai experience, but the Creator gave them massive power without keeping all of these commandments. You understand how this looks? So you see, I'm not your average Sabbath teacher that's going to be, or your average church teacher that's going to be giving you a regular lesson on a Saturday or Sunday. I'm coming at you from a different angle. Because, yeah, I believe in the commandments, but to be honest, I question some of these commandments. Some of them seem strange, and I'm already proving to you, according to my views, that some of the commandments don't make sense and were never given by the Creator, by the Most High. Curse me if you want, that's cool. But I will respond. At least once, because responding many times, sometimes it just gets ridiculous, because people are just idiots out there who are just working like a zombie for somebody else ruling over them, or a zombie toward belief that don't make sense. Because I'm proving in my New Testament is Fake series that the animal sacrifices don't make any sense. So obviously, commandments that tell you to chop up an animal and sacrifice it, in my view, could not have been given to Moses or to anybody by the Creator. Man did that on his own. And Israel would have learned that from other nations. But my lessons are different now, because I've pulled away from the initial feelings that I had after I left the Christian church that I should teach like Hebrew Israelite, because that doesn't feed me enough. It doesn't feed me a lot, of course. And I continue to learn from everybody out there and all the camps and so on. But, it just doesn't feed me enough. I noticed that most teachings, especially even in the Christian church, they just teach the same thing until they die. A pastor will teach the same thing that he learned until the day he retires. And only rarely will he venture outside of it by tacking on a very minor kind of thought that many other pastors or Bible teachers or Torah teachers don't teach. And if you look in the Torah communities, whether you're in the Hebrew community or you're in the religion of Judaism, you stay the same when you say the same things for the most part. And the most things that deviate are things like proving that the children of Israel were black, things like that, and where the location was of this city and so on. But in terms of questioning this quote-unquote God of the Bible, most of us just stay along the same veins. If the Bible says Abraham went there or Moses did this and he went back to Egypt or whatever, we just teach it the same way, and then you go and you put your blood on the doorpost to get saved by the death angel. And then you offer you do your Passover and you run out of Egypt with some gold and jewelry. And we just teach it like that normally. But we can't deviate from the text enough with our own mind when it was your own mind, or I should say of the ancients, that first gave you this written book, this written Torah. It was somebody's mind that these words came into and they wrote it down. So they had to be a thinking person first that first came and said, this is what I'm thinking now because this came into my mind. They said, who told you that? God, the Most High, or whatever you might have called him back then. So let's say Hosea is going to write something down, or Isaiah. It's really in their mind. They just come to you and said, I was meditating or I was just sitting down and the God of Israel spoke to me, and now I got a book. It's the book of Hosea, because I'm the prophet Hosea. I am Micah. But did Micah actually see somebody walking around him in his room while talking to him and saying, I am God, write this down? So it was just in his mind. So a man comes to you a couple thousand years ago and tells you these things came out of his mind, and he's writing it down. He's having a scribe write this. And you just all accept it because you're living with him at the time. And today we accept it because that's how we are as well. But if someone else in their mind should come up with a thought now, no way, we can't believe that. Or we can't question it. I'm not telling you to believe. I'm telling you to question stuff and search for answers. So I got a different kind of lesson for you. Let's look in Genesis chapter 15, verse 1 to 5. It says, After these things, the word of the Most High came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Most High, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Most High came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. Now that sounds very good. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. What we're seeing here is that this Abram, who was going to be renamed to Abraham, somehow signaling the new start of a nation called Israel later on. So there's some newness coming from the Creator. But he's going to do this in a way where he wipes out the ancient Ethiopians or Cushites that were running the world at that point. Before him, too. So people have got a structure set up nicely, and they're doing their stuff, and the Creator gave them their power, and the Most High is just going to just wipe them out. Without telling us how evil they were for the reason which he's going to wipe them out, these ancient Ethiopian or Cushites. He's just going to wipe them out. In fact, they were so well set up and so powerful that they got their, Abraham and Israel got their start from them, might I say. But he's going to kill the parents or wipe them out of history and set up a new nation, even though the scriptures say that you should honor your father and your mother, which I'm going to read. But if we look here at verse 3, where was it? Verse 2 and 3, Abraham is like, look, you haven't given me a child. This one is going to be an heir in my house. Basically, he's not his own child, and he's going to be my heir. And the Most High is like, no, he's not going to be your heir. I'm going to give you your own child coming out of your own bowels, your own body. He's going to be your heir. So this Creator, setting up Abram to be Abraham later, is going to bypass, and in that man's house or life and in his heritage, he's going to destroy the man's association with his culture. So whoever these ancient Assyrians or Akkadians or Cushites are, they've got this culture about them. You don't have a child, then your servant becomes your heir. Somebody who's living with you, serving you, working with you, and so on, like your right-hand person and so on, they're chosen to be your heir. That's a part of your culture. And so you can, we use people's culture to identify them in the earth. You can tell who this and that people were because of their culture, who they're connected to in the past, and so on. So he's going to threaten and wipe out this man's connection, disconnect his connection with his culture, and set up a completely new culture and then tell the man to honor his culture or honor his mother and his father. So he should honor the Cushites, but he's going to break the connection with the culture and not have him deal with an heir from his cultural practices and set up something very new and then set up a new empire called Israel. And later on, this Israel would kill those same Ethiopians. Maybe 1 million, as some people say, which I covered in another lesson recently. So it looks a little bit strange there, you know, like I'm just reading the Bible, so, and you can tell from my many videos, I've got over 200 videos now, although I've deleted maybe 40 of them recently. You can tell I'm studying the Torah and reading the Torah. So I don't know why you're getting so uptight sometimes, because you all told me, even from the Christian church, that you can read the same text and get something new out of it all the time. So if now, after so many years of reading the scriptures and now reading the Torah, I'm seeing something different and asking different questions, I don't see why you should be so upset, because if there are many things that can be seen in the text, why is it that only your Torah idea can come out of the text when you read it, but I should not have an idea as well? And I don't see the Creator standing by you saying, no, believe him or believe her. So why can't I think for myself? So Abraham rejects his father's house and heritage, because the Most High told him to leave and go travel to this other new place that I'm going to show you and so on. Going to build you up, make you great. And he rejects his father's house and heritage and becomes founder of a new nation. And then the scriptures teach us to respect our fathers and learn the past from them. Well, I want to learn from Abraham's ancient fathers about what Adam did and where Eden is, and if Adam ever talked with the Creator or saw Jesus Christ in the garden. Because this kind of information would be very pivotal to how I understand the rest of the scriptures and how I can decide if the Creator gave this book or how much of it he gave, or if our teachings today, with the millions and billions of books on the earth, if those books are really being honest in their attempt to convey what the Creator said and did in ancient times. Right? They say if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going, you can't figure out the way. So how am I going to tell where I should go and where the rest of us should go in the future if I can't find out just what was there in the past from all the billions of books on earth? So now let's look at the commandments. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 2. I am the Most High, thy power, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So that's Israel is dealing with. But we know they got their start from Abraham, possibly before that, but we hear the term Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now let's run down to verse 12, the commandments that no Torah reader, whether Hebrew or in Judaism, should be working against. So Abraham himself should not have been working against this also. It says here in verse 12, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Most High thy power giveth thee. Now we know Israel didn't rule well in their splendor and in peace and so on for very long, because they kept being kicked out of the land, especially in the book of Judges, only to finally be kicked out later, as Isaiah would prophesy that they're going to go into captivity and so on. And the book of Kings has records of that as well. Assyrian captivity, Babylonian captivity. And so what we're seeing is that Israel had a problem being in the land, being long in the land. So I have to in some way associate that history and reality with the commandment in Exodus chapter 20 verse 12 that says, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land. Now I know enough of the Torah to know that the meanings in Torah are spread out in precepts. So this would only be one of the precepts, because you would consider different commandments that Israel broke to get kicked out. But this would have to then be one of the commandments that they broke to have gotten kicked out. They did not honor their father and their mother, so their days were not long in the land, because very quickly they continued to be oppressed by people who were conquering them in the book of Judges, and later on, like I said, with Assyrian and Babylonian captivity. So Israel did not honor their father and their mother. Who is the father and the mother of the nation of Israel? When we read of ancient Cushites who were dominating the world before Israel got set up. But Abraham disconnects himself by instruction from the God of the Torah that says, leave your father's house and forget your cultural practice of taking your heir to set up because you don't have your own child. And I'm going to disconnect you and give you a new kind of heir. So, I don't know. I'm just reading the scriptures. I'm just studying the Torah. So, anyway, Abraham disowned his whole heritage, and started a new family line that disconnected from cultural practices, beliefs, and, cut himself off. He was no longer Akkadian. He was no longer Assyrian. He was no longer Ethiopian. He was no longer Cushite. He was now an Israelite or a pre-Israelite. If you want to say Israelite nation really started coming out of Egypt. So this man then becoming an Israelite or pre-Israelite, as well as the nation of Israel becoming an Israelite nation, now becomes a new thing that never existed on the earth. So in the time when the Cushites just got set up and they were dominating the earth, and you had said to them something about the Akkadians, the Assyrians, they know that you mentioned different people groups and so on. They would tell you about that. Different people groups that were starting up. But if you had mentioned Israelite to them, they would have wondered who or what you were talking about. Because there were no such people. No such nation. But I find that, won't bother read it right now, but Moses at one point, when the Most High, they left Egypt, went into the wilderness and so on, and the Most High is like, look, these people are just crazy, like they just lost their mind, they won't follow my instructions and so on, I'm going to just destroy them. Back up out of the way, Moses, let me just get my hand on them here and slap them with my hand, just destroy them. Moses is like, look, how can you destroy them? Like, the other nations are going to say you don't know what you're doing because you brought them out of Egypt and you can't really fulfill the plans that you said and the word that you spake about setting them up. So if you destroy them, people are going to look at you like, this God, he just don't make sense. Why bother follow him anyway? And Moses is like, look, if you're going to destroy them, destroy me also. No, kick back, Moses. I'll make a new nation out of you. I guess just like he made a new nation out of Abraham and left the Cushites behind. So this God again seems to love making new nations, or at least he has it on his mind. And somehow in the Christian religion, they feel that God made a new nation, spiritual Israel, and they're spiritual Israelites in the Christian religion, a new nation. But Moses is like, no, you can't do this thing. Rethink this thing, basically Moses is saying. So, this Abraham now, he starts out, he's like a new Israelite. Or pre-Israelite. So, that's like me now saying, I'm an Israelite. Get lost, you damn Jamaicans. Like some Israelites curse Hamites and say that they're some nasty, dirty, stinking Africans. Can you imagine me? I grew up in Jamaica in the Christian church. Now I hear, black people are Israelites. So I'm like, these nasty, dirty Jamaicans. Or these nasty, dirty Trinidadians. It's like, it's just crazy, man. So picture Abraham now. You're going to make a new nation out of me. These dirty Cushites. like cursing Nimrod and all that, like, like putting them down, putting on Nimrod and all the Assyrians, and, he's just like, he can't stand the Babylonians, you dirty Babylonians. And so all of a sudden now, whoever Abraham was of, they're low down to him because now the Most High is making a new nation, so they don't mean anything anymore. He can't identify with being Cushite. He can't identify with being Assyrian or with being Akkadian anymore, because now he is a pre-Israelite. A new nation is coming out of him. So he can't associate with that anymore. But the same God said to honor your father and your mother. So you see that maybe something needs to be cleared up with our thinking, which comes out of our teachings. Who taught us these things? Do we need to revamp that which is Torah teaching? Israelite, 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 and we don't honor the ancient Cushite? We only want to go into ancient Cushite information when we need to prove that blacks were powerful at one point and that we ran the world. And that the Israelite in the Bible is linked to the Cushites, and if they were black, then Israel was black. We don't seem to have much need for the Cushite in ancient times anymore. We just delve into it for those reasons. But where is the greatness of the Israelite of 1000 BC, of the time of David and Solomon and so on? Where are the artifacts that show what these people left behind? The great structures that Israel built and so on. But you can find the great structures and so on that the ancient Cushites built. That proves something about the ancient Cushites. Their monuments still stand today. The ancient Egyptians, their monuments and their records, although many have been destroyed, but still stand, they can be proven and shown today. Where are the monuments and the records outside of the Torah that prove where the Israelites lived and what they built and what they did? Where? Now, I know according to the Torah, we would have been broken down and so on, so I can appreciate that from a Torah perspective. But if Europeans come and they were fighting down the Africans or the Cushites for so long and the Egyptians, and they took them down and whatever, but their monuments still stand. If they destroyed the greatest nation, Israel, in the Bible, how come their monuments don't stand in a way that prove that they were black and that they had this great empire? Or was the empire of the Cushite? Was Israel just a part of the Cushite empire, of the Egyptian empire? It gets real messy right there, I understand. You'll knock me down a few notches for that, I'll accept that. But I'm just trying to trouble your mind to think some more things than you normally are told to think. Because with all that they did to the ancient Egyptians and Cushites, their monuments still stand. Their greatness is still shown in what they had by their ancient peoples. So they could not destroy everything about the people. But you're telling me everything was destroyed about the ancient Israelite so that nothing can be found? That proves the greatness of this Israelite empire and the blackness of this Israelite empire and so on. How could they destroy Israel's monuments and whatever of their legacy so much that it's like ground down to like fine powder and blown away in the dust, but they could not do it to the African empires? If Israel had more power from their God that sent angels and whatever, and he wasn't protecting the Cushite empire in that way, how could the Cushite empire stand up to last so much against what the Europeans did? But the Israelite empire could not last enough to leave something more behind. that we're scratching the surface, and all we can prove is what the Cushites did. Maybe the Cushite is the Israelite. Or at least some of them, whatever the real deal is. I'm still looking into this new way of thinking. Maybe the chosen people on earth are the Cushites. And Israel is just another name that the Cushites gave themselves, because they went everywhere, they gave different names. Or maybe Israel is just one of the many names they use for different segments of the Cushites. Oh, gee, you know, at this point, I'm supposed to read a page from a book titled The Pentateuch. And, man, I don't have it with me right now, so it would just be great to put in here. So I'm going to have to make another video and put that in it. Or maybe I'll read it and try to splice it into the recording here if I remember. But anyway, let's move on. Abraham is no more ideal than Enoch, according to how I'm looking while reading the Torah and reading history. So no wonder I'm saying Abraham is overrated. And so is Israel overrated as well? Now you'll say I'm selling out. Look, I've never been into African information all my life. I never cared about it. I was just in the Christian church, speaking in tongues and waiting for Jesus to come in the rapture and take me up to heaven. I never cared about history in this way and African things. It took me years to understand what Pan-African means. And I only found it out because I was reading the Torah and I was forced to consider black history in general, because I was wondering who wrote this book we call the Torah or the Bible. And now I find that in order to understand the Torah of the Israelite, I have to understand one primary piece of ancient information. Information not about the Israelite, but about the Cushites. To understand Israel, you must understand the Cushite history that's been left behind. Is that telling you something yet? That to know Israel, you have to know the Cushite. But you tell me Shem is the one to search for. So Torah seems to hate Ham, even though Torah shows that Ham and Israel, or Ham and Shem, were always together. They worked together. Yeah, sure, they might have fought with each other, but they worked together a lot, as if they were one people. Sometimes they even went into captivity together. Because if some other nation is going to fight, like the Hittite coming up against Egypt, a Hamite, or Babylonian or somebody that's coming up against Israel, both the Hamite and the Shemite of Israel would have been living in Egypt when the Hittites are coming against them. And so whoever's there, whether they're rising or falling, they're going to rise and fall together. The same with Israel. Hamites would have been in the land of Israel as well, keeping the Torah. And so if an enemy is coming to whip Israel's butt because they won't keep the commandments, then if they're taken into captivity, that means Hamites are going to be led into captivity along with Israel. These people were together. They lived as one. But Abraham is no more ideal than Enoch, I was trying to say. So why is Enoch not the father of the nation of Israel? You know that Enoch, where it says Enoch walked with God and he was not, for God took him, and that's all you get in the Torah. But you can find information outside of the Torah and decide whether you can believe it or not. But Abraham is not credited with what Enoch is credited with. That this man was so fine-tuned, so tuned in to what the Creator wanted. Creator is not written off in Torah as having to try to convince Enoch to keep his commandments. He has to make Abraham a promise to make him great and give him his own ear. For Abraham to say, all right, I'll leave my father. I'll cut off my ties with my father to go and get your promises. So in the world of Torah, it seems to me, from what I understand so far of learning the Torah, as a newbie with the Torah, is that seems to be a lesser quality kind of person that Abraham is showing himself to be, if he has to take up on a promise from the Creator to get into, good standing with the Creator and get that blessing and so on. But Enoch, the Torah just simply says that he walked with the Most High. So he didn't have to see no carrot or promise dangling in front of his face to say, okay, I'm going to walk with you. He just walked with him. And the Most High's like, damn, I want this man. Which itself seems kind of strange, because if you can find a man that hits the mark so well, why not keep that man on earth so more people can learn from him and learn to hit the mark? But the Creator finally finds one man. In the prophets like Isaiah and so on, I searched, I couldn't find a man. Jeremiah, I searched, I couldn't find a man, wherever that's written. But he finds a man like Enoch that hits the mark so well. And he gets rid of the man. Plucks him out of the earth. And then leaves the earth to struggle with all the other people who can't quite hit the mark as well. And tells the earth to try to find their way to him. So why is Enoch not the father of the nation of Israel? Enoch had such strong obedience to the Most High that the Most High, I have to just take this man. Genesis chapter 28, verse 10 to 14. Because you see, with that thought, Abraham, it's like he doesn't hold a candle to this Enoch, but he is not chosen. So if you say that from the Garden of Eden, this so-called Jesus came and offered a sacrifice by killing some animal for Adam's sin, Adam and Eve, and it's a type of Christ and so on, although I don't want to get into this New Testament stuff right here. But still, I got to throw it in. If this Jesus or the Creator came and he heard a voice walking in the garden and he's coming to clear up stuff, then obviously he's interested in man walking right on the earth and keeping his commandments and so on. And this great second Adam is coming in the New Testament times to get man back on track, which after 2,000 years still can't seem to happen. But some people are worshipping him. Then why is it that when he found one man, Enoch, walking on track with what the Creator wanted, that he didn't do something great with that man, Enoch? Why isn't Enoch the Messiah? Or the one who started the nation of Israel? Because it seems to me like Abraham, Moses, none of them, Jesus, can hold a candle to Enoch. So Abraham seems overrated when you consider the life of Enoch, or when you consider the lack of the information of the life of Enoch that we're presented with in the Torah. So now, Genesis 28, 10 to 14. And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place, and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place, and put them for his pillows, and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth. And the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Most High stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. So notice here, the God of Jacob is honored right here, but Abraham had to disconnect himself from his father. But the father of Jacob here is clearly honored. Verse 14, and thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south, and in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Listen, people. Are you going to really think about what I'm saying in this lesson? Or are you going to be so scared because you are a Torah or a Bible reader? Are you going to be so scared that you cannot repeat this except in private circles? You cannot repeat this. You cannot teach this. You cannot whatever, because this is too threatening. This is too scary. We don't like people who think like this because it says something about the Torah. Listen, I didn't write the Torah. Do I believe the Torah? Of course I do, but I didn't write it. So you're not going to put any Torah in front of me and tell me not to question it. I can't even find the person who wrote it. I got to question this other book, question that other book, but I shouldn't question the Torah. So their seed is going to be as the dust of the earth, because I guess he already told Abraham he's going to make his seed like that, stars of heaven, dust of the earth, or whatever, sand of the sea, so on. But look at this. Their seed, so basically the Israelite seed is going to be as the dust of the earth. That's what the Torah is saying in Genesis 10 to 14. But when I go outside of the pages of the Torah and read history, with my limited knowledge of history now, as I'm just starting to search these things of ancient history, I find that the Cushites already did this and were spread abroad like the dust of the earth before a Torah was written. Oh man. Maybe one day I should give you a regular Torah lesson. You know, tell you to chop up an animal and sacrifice him, or give you a regular God is love Christian message for a Sunday lesson. Because you read the Bible and you can't appreciate some of these things I'm saying. Because it's too scary to you. It challenges your mind too much. It's just like, can this brother just teach something regular? Just tell us God is love, Jesus is love. Tell us to just keep the 10 Commandments. You know, because this is crazy. This is crazy. Brother, you could never run a camp because people wouldn't come to your camp to hear all this stuff. Tell us how to watch the moon and when the moon comes in, because, brother, you're too scary. Oh, man. I mean, I don't know. Like, let's go on here. Now, I got to go back to that book I mentioned, the Pentateuch, because I got to read another page here to insert here if I remember. So I got to pass this up. But basically, the thought that I would have mentioned if I read that part would say, at the bottom of that page, okay, you know what, skip that. If I insert it. So now, Genesis chapter 14, verse 18 to 20. To look again, this lesson of how Abraham is overrated. Genesis chapter 14, verse 18 to 20. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was a priest of the Most High God. Listen, most times when you hear Melchizedek taught about, they're going to tell you about priesthood and Christ and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to share something different with you. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. This is what your Torah is saying. And he was the priest of the Most High God. Is it true? Of course I believe it's true. I'm reading it right here because I believe the Torah, so I'm going to tell you it's true. I believe it. It's true in terms of my belief. Verse 19, and he blessed him and said, blessed be Abram. So apparently he wasn't Abraham yet, of the Most High God. So Abram was of the Most High God, even though he was not yet Abraham. So he can be of the Most High God, even though his name hasn't changed yet, meaning he hasn't yet moved into this new life. So blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. So Abram is connected to some deep stuff before he's even changed. Verse 20, and blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand, and he gave him tithes of all. People, what this is saying to me is that, as I've told you before with the backdrop of the great Kushite Empire, is that it seems to me to have been some Egyptian or Kushite, although Egyptian came later, empire that already has some priestly kind of system set up, and they were paying tithes, the same tithes and priests that you read of in the nation of Israel. But I learned from a child in the Christian church that priests and tithes was something only about the Bible and of ancient Israel. And we should pay tithes because ancient Israel did it. But now as I read some more, I find that there were priests in other nations and they were paying tithes as well. Although that tithes wasn't necessarily money. Just like giving food, something like that. But obviously tithes were being paid in a priesthood that knew the Most High God. So, is Abraham and Israel overrated? Sure, make a video and cuss me out because you want to say, brother, you're working against Israel now. It's like, but is Abraham overrated and this priestly system of Israel overrated when Cushites were paying paying tithes to a priesthood that knew the Most High God before Israel was set up? So that the nation of Israel is not new with its priesthood and tithing system coming out of Egypt, but this nation of Israel piggybacks on an existing group of people called Egypt or Egyptians, who themselves came out of the ancient Ethiopians. They piggybacked on this group of people and their priest or religious system that even offered sacrifices like you read of in the scriptures, in the Torah of Israel, and even paid tithes to priests. So Israel wasn't coming in with anything new. What is the cause for this newness of Israel and its religious or ceremonial practices? Why is the Torah unique? In what sense is the Torah practices unique with its priests and its prophets when there were other prophets around? There were prophets in other nations as well. What is meant by the newness of Israel and the destroying in our minds and in history of an empire before them, the Ethiopian or Kushite Empire, that Israel took over? And you notice why people aren't spending a lot of time for these past how many years taking over the Kushite Empire, but they'll take over the Israelite Empire, set themselves up in the land of Israel and say, we are the ancient Israelites. But they don't do that with the Kushite Empire. They might tell you they are the ancient Egyptians as well, although they can't prove that. It's obvious. It's a shameful thing. But somehow it seems that they stop right there. They don't really tell you that they are the ancient Kushites. They aren't ruling in all these Kushite territories of ancient times and say we are the ancient Kushites. They came on ships to go and fill the land of Israel and say we're returning home. We are the scattered Israelites, but I don't see in history that they were going on ships returning home to the land of Cush to say we are the ancient Cushites. Maybe that one might be a little more difficult to pull off. So they tell you the greatness or the greater ancient empire was the Israelite empire that was a chosen of God. Meanwhile, you got the greatness of the Kushite empire sitting down, and nobody wants to say these people were the chosen of God. Because it's said that he made the other nations were jealous of the Assyrian. So the Assyrian must have got their power, it seems to me, from the Creator. And those Assyrians, as far as I've checked, were black initially. So then what was the purpose of Sinai, when priests and prophets and so on already knew the Most High God?